Hi, we are MyTale and this is QuillScape, a podcast where we discuss about games as a new medium of expression through interactive storytelling and visual narrative as a craft. Here you will find all the tools and skills you need to build an immersive narrative experience in your game. As an indie studio, we also wish to discuss the importance of soft skills and building empowering company culture to nurture your creative drive. Hi everyone, and welcome to another episode of QuillScape podcast. My name is Natasha Skult, and today we have a very special guest with us to discuss visual interactive storytelling in games. Please meet Chris Solarski.
Oh, thank you very much for having me, Natasha. Pleased to meet you, everyone.
Hi Chris, welcome to the show. Let's start with a short intro, as there is so much that you do, from game development, academic work, teaching, and also community building through IGDA. So I think it would be the best that you introduce yourself.
I'm originally from the UK with Polish parents, but I have been living in Switzerland for around 14 years, from where I manage the IGDA's Switzerland chapter. And I also sort of co-host the IGDA's Game Art SIG together with you, Natasha. But like my professional work really focuses on traditional crafts, so like the techniques of the old masters and sort of we can adapt composition theory, shape language, concepts like that, which usually are very much associated with paintings and sculpture, how we can use them to design games. And that's kind of how me and Natasha, the two of us, connected originally. Was this common love for painting and traditional craft, and how we can better apply it and understand it in the context of interaction design.
Well, this is why we are having this discussion today, as we're both nerds and gamers and very passionate about traditional art as well as interactive storytelling. Can you tell us, what is your first memory of video games and playing video games? Anything in particular that comes to your mind?
This one's visiting a friend's house who had I think an Amstrad computer. I later had a Spectrum ZX. I think the figure names, the model names. But it was sort of watching games and playing games like Gaunt, where you each one of us, I think, had like a space on the keyboards to play, and it was the cooperative aspects of Gauntlet. It was like a dungeon crawler for up to 4 players, and I loved that more than any other game. I think that sort of stayed with me for a long time. And something that's not so related to games, so to speak, but to creativity, because I originally got asked this question as well, and I recalled Lego being a very big influence on me. So like playing Lego and building things, creating stuff as well. And I think that's very important to have those important memories kind of noted for myself.
Oh, indeed. Building as a concept, I mean, building from building blocks to building worlds and building stories. It's exactly what the beauty of our craft is. You have been writing quite many books by now on visual production and especially game art production and utilizing art theory practices. Can you tell us more about combination of theory and practice in your day-to-day work?
Sure thing. Thank you for mentioning my books. I've written 3 in total, and to this date, I'm not sure if more will come. One was Drawing Basics in Video Game Art, which I think is by far the most successful, and it sort of like looks, as you say, about the game art production. But the more recent one explores these same principles, but applied to the user experience design process. And what I just enjoy highlighting there is that we often kind of have this separation between aesthetics and the mechanics. As like the game itself is like at the center of the experience, of course, and the aesthetics, the visual look, usually is something that is just stuck on top of this fundamental layer. And what I found by exploring concepts like composition and shape language in particular is that they highlight in an interactive context that the real aesthetics, the real art of games is in the movement. and they allow us to explore aesthetics from a kinesthetics point of view. So it's from a movement based standpoint. And this opens up so many new possibilities. And the way that I like to see this, especially in the future, is to stop thinking about games in terms of what players will be doing, the activities from moment to moment, but really start the development process by thinking what will the players become, really on an emotional and very much a physical level. And this is usually called sensory design, where you start by really identifying objectives in terms of gestures and physical sensations, and then you design the mechanics around that. So it's kind of messing up with the MDA, the standard MDA, mechanics, dynamics, aesthetics process, and putting aesthetics first, then mechanics, then dynamics. But the aesthetics are kinesthetics, is sort of like the physical experience. And here, when we look at it this way, there are an amazing amount of parallels between how images moved the audience around, and how they affected the audience's emotions, and how we can really establish a strong artistic heritage, a link to all the art history that has come before. And I think this is very important for us because games are so young, despite being so huge and spectacular and making so much money, that we're still evolving the art form, and learning about what is it really, and where can it go.
Well, in this podcast, we really want to acknowledge the experiences that we create within games, especially story heavy ones, and how much stories have huge impact on our emotional engagement with games.
Yes, I mean it's for me. I mean, coming from the visual side, what is important, I mean, when you're designing the game, is really to understand that every can be shaped, literally, like even movement, avatar behavior, and we, of course, as interaction designers, need to understand this, our capabilities, like what and how we can shape every single aspect of the game experience, so much like a musical instrument, that you're kind of tuning different things to suit different kinesthetic sensations. And then, of course, the closer we bring the player's real world to the game, then the more amplified and the more resonant those experiences will be. So, we want to heighten these links between the virtual world. The virtual world has no substance. It's just like a painting in a way. It's sort of like you don't touch the painting, you sort of experience it visually. With games, we have like that extra added sensation of movement, and even though it's abstracted, we're not, apart from some advanced VR technology, using a controller, it's always going to be different to performing the same activities as your avatar. But we have an amazing amount of possibilities to use traditional craft to better understand how to tune the virtual experience, the structure of the game, so that the player really feels that tactile connection with the avatar is doing. So they even more feel like they are the avatar. Um, and I think that's very exciting for me.
This is also how our brain works. I mean, can mimic the feelings and all the movements through the input of the devices that we use in while playing the games.
Yeah, exactly. And it's on one level, it's to really bring this tactile value. I mean, as artists, I think I still always try to promote the importance of holding a pencil or holding a paintbrush. I think you really do miss a lot of the tactile interaction when you're working purely digitally. I think there's like a level of physical sensations that are lost working purely digitally. And the other one is also to compare the depth, the emotional depth of the average game with other media, more established art forms, sort of more sophisticated art forms in terms of storytelling. I would say, where we often in games are guilty of creating very uh, experiences which explore one single aesthetic that simply escalates in intensity. And This is down to formal game design. You know, when like chess, we have an objective, and you often are stuck with like a particular structure of gameplay mechanics that you have to just play around with and kind of restructure until they get harder and harder and harder. And I think when we come at it from a sensory design approach, so like I explore in the interactive empathy and embodiment book, the newest one, then it's really you start by thinking, okay, how will the player change, and then you're kind of forced to outside of this formal structure. The senses have to change from moment to moment to reflect that the avatar is changing, and by doing that, the mechanics have to change, and then the player's physical sensations change. And I think that's also important, that the tactile nature of being an artist. We are experts at that. We use our hands, we use our arms to paint, to understand, to transport that to the player, and to transport the importance of change, and the different textural variety of movements that we as professionals are experienced in.
Do you have any tips for younger artists? For example, how or where to start with exploring these options from art theory? And as we all know, contemporary studies don't necessarily cover this, even at the university level. So, any tips of where they can potentially find the resources?
Sure. Well, if anyone is interested in like the method that I developed, then you can download the book for free on Gumroad. So I think Natasha will maybe share the link. My website is solarskistudio.com. From there, you can find the interactive empathy and embodiments to download. It is a full-on book. It's like even composed of 2 volumes, and then you can learn about the history of structural composition and shape language, and the actual methods. But more on the this craft side, I mean, I always say that I think life drawing, drawing the figure, is one of the most difficult things to do, and one of the most rewarding, and also the practice that accelerates your knowledge the fastest. There are so many things going on with the human figure. So drawing from life, drawing models, drawing people, really, especially in short amounts of time, really forces you to get down to the DNA of the figure. Like what is the essence of the pose? What is the essence of the expression? And all of this just helps you to be see the simplicity in everything. So reality is so complex that we, in professional artists, the ones at the top of their field, are just thinking on a very abstract level. I often make the association of Neo staring in the kind of cascading text, sort of in the Matrix, where like you're not seeing reality anymore. You're just seeing the basic volumes, the basic lines, and everything starts to have a connection, and you become very efficient at capturing a gesture, or capturing the form of an object that is ultimately very complex. And it's sort of the focusing on the craft will make you skilled in every design discipline that you will encounter. It's just really, the fundamentals are related to film, user experience design, decor design, furniture design. It's really a good and worthwhile investment to start with the basics, and drawing with a pencil, perspective, and then drawing figures whenever you can at your local life drawing sketch group.
Oh, for sure. So, everyone, please pause the podcast and check the links in the comments. Make sure to download the latest book by Chris. As a creative individual and in your day to day work, as well as, let's say, hobby projects, so to say, how do you manage your creative flow? When are you most creative?
Sure. This is also something I'm talking about recently, and something I heard. Sorry, you might have to help me, Natasha. The person behind schoolism.com, that fantastic website. What's his name? Yeah, I think it's Bobby Chu, the artist. So he was. I heard it in a podcast once, and I was reflecting on it, and what he recommended as well was really being aware of, yeah, like the your most productive time of day. And we some of us are morning people, some of us are evening people, if I understood your question correctly. And I'm definitely a morning person, and for me that's where I try to do my most creative work. And what Bobby Chu was also recommending is that's when you don't want to check any of your emails at all. Just use that time when you know that you're at your creative peak, productive peak, work on your creative stuff. And that might only last 3 hours or so. And then in the afternoon, that's when open up your social media, check your emails, and start doing the admin stuff. And this was, for me, a fantastic tip, which really helps. I can't say that I follow it religious like as tightly as idealistically as I would like, but morning for me, and I try to have as few distractions as possible.
You are active in community building, as we know, with the Game Art SIG, and also you are a leader of the IGDA Switzerland chapter. With students and young artists, quite often comes the word networking. How important it is to actually create these relationships with the professionals from the field. Well, this is also how we met back in San Francisco. But do you have any tips and thoughts generally on networking?
I think it's very important. I mean, it's important not to see networking as a goal to get something from somebody else. Networking is maybe even like the wrong words to use. It's just connecting with people. And if you see it that way, then I think it becomes much less anxiety ridden activity. As an artist, and I see it in my classes as well. We, sometimes have parallel classes, like the year is so big, so we break them up into two classes. And there's always surprising how much the dynamic in each class influences the quality of the work. The classes that are very much more sociable and spend time, the individual students spend time hanging out with each other, always do much better. They sort of feed off each other's creativity. They learn from each other. They inspire each other. And that's more unfortunately, not, it's nothing that we can control as the teachers. They just a little bit the quality is a little bit lower overall because they're missing this connection and this mutual inspiration. And this, of course, translates into the real world where, especially you don't even have the luxury of being in a classroom. You might be just working remotely somewhere, maybe even far away from the industry hotspots. And you need that to sort of like to, have heroes that are, currently way beyond your experience to guide you and to visualize I want to be like this person, but also people that are closer to home and say they're a little bit better than me perhaps, and I want to learn with them, I want to draw with them, and this is a huge boost. And then of course there is that business side where just connecting with people ultimately does result in opportunities, not necessarily getting a job, but also just helping out to make connections or reviewing portfolios. All of this is a positive outcome of connecting. And so yeah, networking I think is kind of like a negative word. It's sort of very businessy, and I think just connecting is sort of a better way of looking at it.
Thank you so much for your time today and chatting with us. As we want to keep this short and sweet, I just want to ask one more thing as the takeaway. If you have any short story or anecdote that you wish to share with us, what shaped you as the person that you are today?
Sure, I'm not sure it will be like a conventional answer. I think there's part of it is natural interest to understand the structure of things, and I love the opportunity that the games industry gives me because, as I said, it's very young, it's huge and flashy and Hollywoody, but it's still a young art form, and I love that potential to have an impact on it through my game theory work. But as an individual, I would say it's not even arts related. It's traveling the world and meeting people. We we can't hope to translate interesting, rich, emotionally rich experiences if we don't live, if we don't go out to the door and get away from the computer. And as I always, even the game that I started working on now, at least a prototype. Is kind of bringing together my passions in snowboarding and swimming, playing with my son. It's not self-referencing. It doesn't reference the industry in many ways. You could say it's almost autobiographical or like an archive of the things that I enjoy. And so it's I would say that is huge part of who I am, like having surfing around the world or snowboarding, seeing the mountains and the landscape, meeting lots of very different people is what motivates me.
Well, what a better place than Switzerland to do so. And final note, where can people reach out to you? How to contact you? What would be the easiest way?
I think Twitter is sort of Twitter and Instagram are mine. I mean, I also have a book account, but I think I'm most Twitter seems to be more for discussions, Instagram for posting images, as I think as everybody uses it. But definitely, please feel free to get in touch by any one of those channels, or just a direct email, which you'll find on my website.
Thank you, Chris.
Okay, thank you very much, everyone, and Natasha for having me.
Thank you, everyone, for being with us. Join us in the next episode with a new guest. See you around.